Oh man, it is fucking torture listening to you guys talk about this.
Is
It
it?
is genuine. Oh god, yeah.
Okay.
Holy
Well,
shit.
tell us.
I don't
tell
even
us
I
what
don't
we're
even know
looking
where
at.
to begin, right? So on one hand, you're like, oh, the agreement was with the USSR and that's dissolved. So therefore, blah blah blah. And there are still no weapons in East Germany. But
I
you know,
wait,
they
wait,
are
wait,
in
wait,
Poland
wait, wait,
and
wait,
stuff
wait.
like
I
no, I'm not
literally
waiting.
never
No,
said that, though.
listen, right? You did say this, right?
No, I
And
didn't.
then, yes, you did.
Well,
And
do you want
then
to do? Do you
went,
want to do one point at a time, or do you want to do like
no,
your
no, I'm going
speech
to
and
lay out
then
my
we'll?
position, then you can
Okay,
critique
lay out
it,
your
right?
position.
And so you say, okay, fine. On paper, theoretically, in a thin sense, the USSR was what that was. No, that's legalistically. But then later on, you were like, oh, as if NATO's just going to disband because Russia isn't the same country. So, oh, there we go. Now, I agree with that. That's the real meat of the thing. That's the real way to look at it. But then you can't have it both ways. So if it was really Russia running the USSR, which it was, obviously, then the agreement with the USSR was really with Russia. And so the Russians suddenly look more justified in saying, well, hang on, you broke this agreement not to continue expanding NATO to our border. Right. And it's things like this, it's inconsistencies like this that basically belie the assumptions you guys approach this with. And I suppose the question I have to begin with then is Russia and the Russian state that is supported by the Russian people worthy of respect?
Wait, repeat the last thing you just said.
Is Russia, the state and the people who uphold it, worthy of respect?
Okay. So regarding the NATO promise, you're talking about the promise to not move east thing, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my position, I've heard this position. My position was not, oh, that agreement was made with the USSR and the USSR doesn't exist anymore, so therefore we can throw it away. That was never my position. My position was what Gorbachev said himself, that the agreement was not about expanding NATO to encompass countries to the east, because at the time that the agreement was made, there were no countries to the east. All those countries were still part of the Soviet Union, which hadn't fallen yet. The agreement was only
Putin
about...
said the same thing with Bush, didn't he?
The agreement was only about... Gorbachev, who agreed to this and said it himself, was only about putting military bases in East Germany once the USSR pulled out of it. And he says himself that US and that NATO fulfilled their end of the bargain in that agreement. And I'm not 100% sure on this. I don't know if you know, if you're knowledgeable in this. I thought that until Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, that basically there wasn't really NATO forces even pushing into the countries that had been expanded to NATO.
No, as I understand it, military resources are being put into Poland, like missiles and things like this. But I'm no great expert. But Putin also did say to Bush, again, and Bush apparently looked him in the eye and promised him, right? And so you've got this continuity of broken promises from America.
Bush promised him what?
That he wouldn't expand NATO east.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that promise, but
okay, well, look it up. This is something Putin said. Now, I don't know, because and I again, this is why I really, it's your framing on Russia that I can only assume comes from you being American, right? Because of the Cold War and because of the way your politicians talk, right? It's insufferable. And it gives you this perspective on Russia that I think is honestly kind of unfair, right? I've never been to Russia. I only know like 2 Russians.
I've been to Russia.
Good for you. Right?
I'm of Russian descent, Sargon. It's in my blood.
I believe it.
What is that supposed to be?
Why'd you bring it up?
Jeez.
I have no interest in Russia, right? I've never been on Russia Today. I don't care. Like, the only time Russia ever enters into my daily life is when there's an American politician saying Russia hacked the elections, right? That's the only time until now, obviously. But the thing I really want to talk to you about is, again, does Russia deserve any respect? Is it a legitimate country? Do they have a right to exist?
Well, I mean, what do you mean by, like, I don't think the country should be destroyed and the people killed, but I don't think,
however you interpret.
Yeah, but I don't think Putin should be respected in terms of, I don't think Putin's government is legitimate.
According to what standard?
I don't think that autocracies where a dictator just seizes power and then just fucks over the rest of their country is worthy of respect.
Yeah, but you said earlier that Putin didn't just seize power; he was granted it. He was passed it by Gorbachev.
Yeah, how did Gorbachev become leader?
Yeah,
of
but
Russia?
what standard are you using?
The standard of believing in Western liberal democracy.
Right. Russia is Russia.
I know it. They don't believe in Western liberal democracy.
No, it's not that they don't believe in it. It's that if I were to characterize countries, right, in short, pithy phrases, right, I would say England is the Shire, right? I would say France is up its own arse with its own greatness. I'd say Germany is secretly a giant danger to the entire world, right? And the Germans know this.
As they always have been. Yeah.
I would say America was probably God's chosen land.
Yes.
Right? You've been gifted all of the best of all things, right? And if I would characterize Russia, I would call it a land of suffering.
Okay, I would agree with all this.
Right.
Keep going.
Okay. So why judge them by the God-given standards of America? That's like saying a short person shit at basketball because they can't dunk.
Here, basically.
Right? No, it's true. Right? For the standards of Russia, Putin is not a terrible leader.
I'm not blaming
in living
the people,
memory.
Though. I'm
They've
not
had
saying
much,
that the Russian...
much worse leaders.
Of course, they were under fucking communism
right.
for
I know,
70 years.
But I mean, you've probably got some sort of 120-year-old babushka somewhere in Siberia who can remember the weak Tsar, right?
Right. I hope not.
You are acting as if Russia should land on its feet with English institutions like America did. Right? It can't
what are you
happen.
About?
It
I'm not.
can't
No.
be done.
Hold
right?
on.
They are
Sargon,
geographically hamstrung. They're historically hamstrung, right? And so you approaching it with this high and mighty, we're fucking better than you, and you're basically evil from our perspective, is to say that they are innately and intrinsically evil, and that can't change. Because they can't simply change their history.
That's a strong.
Yeah, but this is your act. This is the way you approach them.
Okay.
Stop.
Wait,
there is no such thing as a Russian government that is not autocratic.
So
you can always an autocrat. Yeah, duh. He's Russian.
I don't have any problem with the Russian people, or the population. I'm not criticizing the Russian people. I'm not saying that they deserve, to be. I've seen people on social media saying, "Oh, like Russian people deserve to be killed for this," and blah 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 blah. I even had stream that a lot of people disagreed with. I think it was last Sunday or last Tuesday where I was saying that the individual Russian soldiers are not culpable for the decisions of their government. And I don't want to see them all get slaughtered the way some people are cheering for. Okay. I put the blame 100% solely on a single person in Russia.
Okay, but the blame isn't 100% on one person.
It's on Vladimir Putin's shoulders in the way that he's running his country, because since he is an autocrat, the decisions are all his decisions to make. The people didn't elect him.
There is no other way to run Russia at this point in time.
What'd you say?
There is no other way to run Russia.
Can that change incrementally over time, Sargon? I'm curious. Or Carl? I'm trying to call you Carl now.
Whichever you prefer. I don't care. But given the history of Russia, I'm not going to be optimistic about it.
So that might be true. I don't know if that's true or not. But even if I were to grant you that and say,
well, it's neither true nor false because it's indeterminate because we're talking about the future.
But I'm saying, right after the Soviet Union collapses, it would be, I agree, it would be silly to think that a country that's been an empire for thousands of years, that then transforms into a communist empire for 60, 70 years, is going to just magically become, a Western liberal democracy.
Right, but then why say, Putin's bad because he's an autocrat?
Well, hold on. Okay. And as someone brought up a good point, which is that the last 20 years of Russia has been the only time in Russia, in Russia's thousands of year history, that it hasn't been an empire. Okay. So I understand that there's all these pressures here. And I understand that it would be ridiculous to assume that Russia is going to become a magical Western liberal democracy. Okay. But there's a huge difference between me saying, I understand why situations have turned out the way they are, and me justifying the way situations are.
Honestly, I think this is a position you're making up because you're being challenged on what you've said so far.
I've literally held this position.
No, I don't agree.
Repeatedly.
I don't believe that you have. I think you might say that you do.
I've held the position
you might
that
say
you can
that
understand and empathize someone without justifying
but you make
their
a
position
bunch of other assumptions
since day one of this stream.
You make a bunch of other statements that completely betray that statement. Right.
Okay, so to be clear, you're saying you have no problem with what I just said, but you think I just said this now for the first time.
Oh no, I think you wish that you held that position, but you fall back into a position that is remarkably.
But what are you basing this on?
Right? This stream, frankly, and previous ones, the one with Spoon as well. My God, like
you just gave me the cultural relativism woke argument, so I don't know how to respond to this.
It is the problem that it is your culture. And it is your unknowing.
My white European culture, yes.
Yeah, no, it is. It is kind of a privilege, right? And this is what I've always felt whenever I've dealt with Russians, right? Okay. I've always felt that I was fucking lucky to be English and they were unlucky to be Russian.
Of course.
No, you say of course, right? But that you're glossing over just the depth of the suffering in that country.
If I went back in time and every time I used the word Russia in this stream, I just said Putin, which I agree would be more appropriate, would we be having this conversation?
You can't really separate Putin from Russia here, right? He is a product of that suffering too. Well, and the people who like him,
to some extent,
right?
He's a product of realizing how to be corrupt.
100%. He is a product of that fucking suffering. Right?
Yeah, but that doesn't justify. That doesn't someone's suffering doesn't justify them becoming a monster.
They're not monsters. There we go.
Vladimir Putin is a monster.
Yourself, he's a fucking monster. No, he's the best leader Russia has had in over 100 years. Right? He is not genociding them.
Okay.
But literally, tens of millions.
That's
of
a pretty low bar.
Wait,
Carl.
Yeah, that's a very low bar.
For you, that's a low bar.
You're right. For me, of course. What are you talking about?
I think a lot of people would say that's a low bar.
But you could.
We're talking about Russians.
This sounds like, what's that guy's name? This sounds like Danny Fayong making bullshit rationalizations for the Uyghur genocide.
It sounds like. This is
but you could make the same.
You
can make the same argument, Sargon, on the same principle. Say, well, listen, Xi's really good for China. He's lifted all these people out of poverty. Communist China is doing the best for China. Genocide. It's ever fucking
He's
done.
He's actively engaged in a genocide, right? Look,
but why does that matter?
By our standards. What do you mean? Why does that matter?
But that's by our standards. What? Us caring about the Uyghur genocide is liberal Western standards. Who cares?
Let me finish, right? But they're both bad by our standards, right?
Yes.
But by Chinese standards, Xi is not good either, right?
I don't know if that's true at all.
Of course, that's true.
I don't know if that's true.
Was it in the 50s that the communists took over? Again, it's within living memory that there were better options in China, man. Right? But that you don't have that in Russia. In Russia, you just have worse and worse and worse the further back you go. Right? And this is not to say that Putin is a good guy and we should support him or anything like that, which is what you said about me earlier. I fucking said, I just oppose what the media said. No, I know a lot more about this situation than you'd think. And I don't give a fuck what the media say.
Well, okay.
They're both wrong in both ways, basically.
So can we structure this to where you can lay out an argument? You guys are kind of talking over one another.
His argument is that we shouldn't be judging Putin from our privileged American standard.
That is not a monster.
Okay.
This is the thing. You are treating him like a monster, and he's actually not.
I think
it's hard. It's hard to think of a more legitimate kind of leader that Russia could have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? Right?
No, I don't, because both Gorbachev and Yeltsin were far more open. Even Medvedev, for fuck's sakes, was far more open to having positive relations with the West and moving towards a more Western system of things than Putin. I don't buy into this belief or frame that you're trying to set up that Putin is literally the only option that's available to Russia. That being an autocrat who sucks up all the country's resources, makes himself the richest person on the planet, and murders anyone who fucking opposes him is the only choice available to Russia.
No, that's just a Russian choice. You're going to get that no matter who you have in charge of Russia. That's what it's always been.
We didn't have that with Gorbachev. We didn't have that with Yeltsin. We didn't have that with Medvedev.
Bollocks. I don't believe that for a second, right?
Okay. Well,
I don't believe that under the Soviet Union, they weren't killing dissidents or anything like that, right? Because one of the things the Soviets are really good is just not talking about it.
they were moving towards trying to become a more Western liberal democracy, or at least have more positive relations with the West.
And it would be
and
good
Putin is going in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that's probably something to do with America's positioning on this.
It's because he doesn't want to get Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems reasonable, doesn't it?
That seems reasonable for him. That's not the moral position to have for the betterment of your country.
The moral position is that Putin gets Gaddafi'd, is it?
I never said that. Don't.
You just did.
Don't Kathy Newman me.
You just did.
No, right? I said.
So
I said
it's reasonable.
Do you think
for anyone to say that Putin shouldn't be Gaddafi'd, right?
Because
what happened to Gaddafi, whether you like Gaddafi or not, wasn't nice, was it?
No, of course not.
Right.
What
so we
I
don't want
said.
Gaddafiisms.
What I said was that a leader of a country doing everything in their power, including sacrificing the well-being of their own country or their surrounding countries, just to shore up their power, is not the morally ethical position to take.
It is to shore up Russia's power.
It's not. It's to shore up Putin's power.
Is,
that's the big
because
difference.
You're treating Russia as if it has no legitimacy.
I'm treating Putin as if he has no legitimacy.
There is no distinction here between Putin and Russia.
Well, I guess that's the disagreement that we have, because I think there is a difference, or there could be a difference.
I mean, hypothetically, there could be, but in real life, there's not.